is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. While you're listening to the show, check out the description. We've got a Facebook link for everything custom designs. It's our friend Haley Wagner's small business where she does customized clothing for you guys. You can get some customized Around the 412 merch with Smitty is rocking if you're watching over on the YouTube right now. You can also get some customized clothing. You can get some customized tumblers, cups, mugs, sippy cups, shot glasses. That's a new field that Haley is exploring in. So go check out that stuff as well. All sorts of designs over on the Facebook page. So go check that out in the description. You can also download the cut Keeks Barbershop above my head over on YouTube. And he has been our longest sponsor. 401 Burkich Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, Pennsylvania. You can check out Keek. Our friend Christian, Keek is his nickname. You can also check out Tony or Ashley if you do walk-ins, but you can also schedule an appointment on the cut. So if you want to download that up, go check them out. Our longest sponsor. We can't thank them enough for being our sponsor of the show. Also, you're welcome for the airtime on ESPN, Christian.
we got him on ESPN, NFL Live in particular, airing a clip from our Pat Freiermuth interview. If you missed that, you can go watch that from last week's Steelers episode. Speaking of everything custom designs, Haley cooking up some Around the 412 merch for our boy Pat, getting him a t-shirt, a hoodie, and a long sleeve. So he's about to be rocking. I don't even have a long sleeve. So he's going to be having more clothing than I do for Around the 412. And that's something we got to address. Anyway, this is the Around the 412 Steelers show yet again. And I was sitting here, I was like, man, what the heck are we to talk about this week? And then it dawned on me that, hey, look up and down the Steelers roster. I like what they've done this offseason in terms of the moves that they've made. But if the season started tomorrow, Nate Herbig's the starting center. I don't know who's playing slot corner, assuming Dante Jackson's playing on the outside. And wide receiver 2 is Van Jefferson. Like, what are we doing right now? I mean, Omar, I have full trust in Omar Khan. And Dan Moore, by the way, would still be playing tackle, which I think that is actually like a possibility. But I think there's also the opportunity to upgrade upon him. I'm not saying that any of the moves that they've made have been bad moves. I'm just wondering if they've done enough. And I know that there's still obviously the draft coming up this month, which, by the way, tune in for the Around the 412 draft special, jersey giveaways, ticket giveaways, our merch, game changers, which, by the way, working on something with them, by the way. Tyler mentioned that Teach Barbershop has been our longest sponsor. I don't know if he's going to be our only sponsor very much longer. Sorry, Christian. Working on something with game changers right now. But anyway, Around the 412 live draft show, April 25th and 26th. Be here both nights. But I wanted to get your take on this because Alan and I have talked about it a lot on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Like, I understand going into the draft with the idea of taking guys to start right away. Obviously, within your first couple picks, you're kind of expecting that. But like for the Steelers, not only have they kind of pigeonholed themselves into having to draft certain positions, but like, what happens if they don't hit on these? Like, say they draft a center and he's not good, or say they get a slot corner and he's not good, a receiver and he's not good. Tackle, at least you have like Dan Moore as somewhat of a fallback. Wide receiver, I guess, maybe not as important because it's Arthur Smith's offense. Pat Freiermuth is probably wide receiver 2, realistically. But, you know, especially the center one, to me, it's like, what if whoever they draft isn't good? What is the plan?
I have no idea what their plan is. You know, you would have thought that even if they weren't expecting a guy to be their starting center going into the season, that they would have brought in somebody as another option to it. Because, like you said, right now you have Nate Herbig as your starting center if you were to open the season tomorrow. And I don't think that that's going to be good enough with just Nate Herbig and whoever they draft, if they draft somebody. I mean, at this point, if they're not going to bring in anybody and you're only a couple weeks away from the draft, I envision that one of their first couple picks is going to be a center. That's just kind of the writing on the wall that I'm feeling. Like several years ago, how Najee Harris was like already a Steeler before he was even drafted. I just feel like not necessarily a single guy, but the position of center is going to be drafted by the Steelers. I just don't know exactly which one it's going to be. But you would think that they would bring in another guy. I mean, is the best option for what they should do is to bring in their draft pick, whoever it could be, whether that is Jackson Powers Johnson or Zach Frazier, or if they go a different route other than those two guys, and then re-sign Mason Cole as your potential backup to go into the season. I think that as of right now, that's what I would look like as your best option. Mason Cole, while he wasn't great last year, he at least is familiar with the franchise. He'll still have to learn the offense. Everybody does. It's a brand new offense. But I feel like that's probably the most comfortable situation that you have right now, because I don't feel comfortable if they're just going to rely on their starting center and you're having Nate Herbig in the back as the backup. No disrespect to Nate Herbig, but I just don't think that that's a smart plan if you are the Steelers, especially with Arthur Smith as your offensive coordinator and knowing how responsible the center position has to be in that offense for it to succeed. I just don't think that's a smart backup plan if that's the way you're going to go.
I mean, Brian Allen's still out there, a veteran who's played really good ball for the Rams, has been injured a little bit the last couple seasons though. Like Nick Gates, who's spent time with the Giants and last year in Washington. Mason Cole is probably the third best option right now in free agency, which is insane to say. And I thought it was kind of weird timing to cut him. They would let him get, I guess, go look for another opportunity. Well, that hasn't come about, and he's still on the market. And if you can get him, they saved $5 million by doing it. If you get him for like 2 or 3, then yeah, I would be fine with Mason Cole being brought back, being most likely a backup, but a fail safe if either the guy you draft isn't good or if it just doesn't work out that way in the draft. Like, who's to say that it's going to work out for them to get a center? Like, if they don't take one at 20, what's the guarantee that any of the guys, like you talked about Jackson Powers Johnson, this is a take. I don't think he's higher than the number 3 center for them. I think they have both Zach
Oregon, so that makes sense.
I think they like both Zach Frazier and Graham Barton better than Jackson Powers Johnson.
Okay, well, I don't know who they are in the organization, but they need to look past the Mississippi River sometimes. I love the tweet that Derek put out. It's like, this is Jackson Powers Johnson. He could be the centerpiece to your Arthur Smith offense. His one defect is that he played at a West Coast school. Like, that's so true. But I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with that. Mainly my bias towards thinking the Steelers hate West Coast people. But I think that you're running the risk. I agree with you that if you don't take one at pick 20, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get one in the second round. And so while my gut reaction is that they're going to take one, I understand that it's very likely that if they don't take one with their first pick, they might not get one. And so I don't know what their plan is at that point. Like, I legitimately think that if you're not going to experiment with any of the other free agents like a Brian Allen, I think that you just need to bring back Mason Cole and hope for the best if you do not get a center in this year's draft. You cannot roll into this year with Nate Herbig. Currently right now, according to ESPN, their depth chart at center is Nate Herbig and Ryan McCullum. You cannot roll into the season with that. I think that Mason Cole still improves that despite what we saw from Mason Cole last season. But I still think that even if you draft one, you should still, in my opinion, bring back a Mason Cole or one of those other free agent guys out there. You still need some more safety at that position, especially looking at the offense that you're going to be rolling out there and how important that position is to that offense to succeed. So specifically to the center position, have they done enough going into this draft where I feel confident? No, they have not. Because even if they draft one, even if they draft like my guy Jackson Powers Johnson, or if they draft Zach Frazier, I do not necessarily feel confident, not necessarily in that player by themselves, but just the depth as a whole. I don't feel confident that if in the off chance, knock on wood, that guy were to come in and get hurt in week 2, do we have the center position filled for weeks 3 through 17. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. I wasn't even speaking specifically about the center, but absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything that you just said. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the plan of attack here is, but
Well, you want to talk about other positions. Wide receiver, I don't think that I have no idea what they're doing with wide receiver. I understand that it takes 2 to tango, but from what I see on a depth chart to what I see in free agency, like I don't understand what is the disconnect with Tyler Boyd. Is it just he doesn't love the offer that the Steelers put on the table for him?
Probably.
He's not like tenure. Like
So this is my understanding.
I mean,
what I was told is he wants 3 years. The Steelers offered him 2, and also within that 2, it's probably more like a 1-and-1, like how they structured Patrick Peterson's to be able to cut him after year 1. Yeah. Which, like there's nothing there for Tyler Boyd. I think that he's probably hoping somebody gets desperate, whether it's the Steelers or somebody else. Like he might not sign until after the draft. So we'll see what happens with the Steelers, because honestly, the Steelers probably would like to double dip at that position in the draft. So if they only get one guy, maybe they circle back on Tyler Boyd and are like, we're willing to give you maybe not the 3 years, but maybe there's more guaranteed money on that. Because 2 years, $10 million. I don't know what the guarantee of it was. Like my guess would be 5. Maybe they guaranteed him half of that. And I mean, I can't blame him for not taking it. So he was probably looking for 315 with, I don't know, 10 to 12 of it guaranteed, something like that. I don't know about that aspect of it. I just know he was looking for 3. The Steelers offer was 210.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe the contract's not there with Tyler Boyd, but regardless, I mean, when it comes to
that Josh Reynolds deal, Josh Reynolds signed in Denver for 2 years, $14 million, which I was like, okay. I would have given him 7, but yeah, I would have given him 7, but I could see the Steelers not. But he only got 9 guaranteed, so it's really 2-9.
Yeah, and outside of just like the signings, it's like what happened to the trade talk too? Like it just went cold, like dead silent instantly. Like I thought
that could pick back up that's the thing that like maybe on draft night.
Yeah, maybe during the draft that picks back up. But it's like Brandon Ayuk looked like he was going to be a Steeler, and then all of a sudden it just went dead overnight. It seemed like I think wide receiver position is definitely vulnerable for the Steelers. I don't feel confident in it whatsoever. Van Jefferson is right now your wide receiver 2. I know you said earlier, obviously, like if you're just looking at pass catchers, Pat Freiermuth is technically like pass catcher 2 as of right now. But even if you draft 1, even if you draft 2, how confident do you feel in this receiving room knowing that at best the guy might beat out Van Jefferson to be your second wide receiver? Because I would say like you're probably drafting 1. I mean, you're not drafting 1 with your first pick. I cannot see the Steelers doing that. And so
what's funny is we've talked about center. They've shown more interest in first round receivers than center. Like we just assumed they would take a center before a receiver because like you would think that they would. But realistically, if we're going based off of all the information that we have in terms of 30 visits, the pro days attended, combine formals, who they've went to dinner with, all that information, there's more receivers in that group than there are the top centers. So, yeah. I mean, I think that what I could see that being a case of though would be a trade back scenario.
Okay.
Like they don't take one at 20, they move down for maybe it's Jackson Powers Johnson somebody wants to come up for, but more realistically, probably like a Michael Penix or Bone is like a quarterback that somebody wants to get that 5th year on, I think would make sense. Moving up to 20, the Steelers slide back a little bit, and then take a receiver in that spot. I don't know.
Maybe a hot
but I also
take. I think
there's
Bo
actually
Nix is going top 20.
Huh?
I said maybe a hot take. I think Bo Nix is going before the Steelers pick. I think he's going top 20. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. But
that'd be great for the Steelers because I think Penix is going top 15.
I hope there's a huge quarterback run.
If you get all 6 before 20, that would be insane. Also, not topical to what we're talking about right now, but breaking the fourth wall. We are recording during a very relevant Penguin game. The Capitals just beat the Red Wings in regulation in that one, which is the best scenario possible for the Penguins, because even with this, the Capitals only have a 43% chance of making the playoffs. So that was the best possible outcome. I think the Red Wings were like 70% if they won in regulation tonight.
I want to know if you draft, like, let's say, well, I was going to say Troy Franklin, but he goes to Oregon. They don't cross the West Coast. What am I thinking? But if they draft like a Ricky Purcell or a Malachi Corley or Roman Wilson or someone in that within that range where they could be taken with that second round pick.
Yeah.
Like, if that's the only receiver you get in this draft and they're not able to double dip, but even if they do double dip, you got to think that they're waiting until at least round 4 or 5 to take another receiver. I can't imagine them going back-to-back picks on receivers. But even if they do double dip, but imagine they don't, how confident do you feel in that wide receiver room as it is if they don't make a trade or if they don't sign another free agent? That would mean that you were taking George Pickens as your wide receiver 1, and then I would assume that you'd probably slot in whoever you draft with that second round pick as your wide receiver 2. Then Van Jefferson's your wide receiver 3. Calvin Austin's your wide receiver 4. He's back in the same place he was last year, wide receiver 4. I don't see this wide receiver room being really improved off of last year, especially losing Deontay Johnson in a trade to Carolina. I feel like they still are going to need to bring in somebody. And maybe that's just my lack of confidence in what I can see production-wise from like a Van Jefferson as like a wide receiver 3. And maybe I think that they just need to improve their bottom end. But I just feel like you're really relying on George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth to carry you through the air this upcoming season, plus whoever they draft, because it seems like they're going to draft one. I don't think they've done enough. I think free agency-wise or trade-wise, they need to add somebody else, because even if they draft 2 wide receivers, at best, you think that second receiver is cracking maybe wide receiver 4, so they're not going to play all that often. I just feel like they set themselves up pretty thin at that position. And, I mean, maybe in an Arthur Smith offense, that's okay, and you can squeak by with that. But still, you'd like to see them improve at that position, especially the depth of that position going into the season. But, man, I don't know. I don't know what their mindset is and why it went so cold with some of these talks. Like, obviously, if contracts is the issue, that's why the Tyler Boyd thing went cold. Why the Brandon Ayuk thing goes cold? Maybe that picks up during the draft. But it's very interesting to me how some of these things are very hot topics, and maybe that's a lot of fan base driven hot topics, and that's why it's a hot topic. But it's just because cold.
Teams reaching out to teams to see who's available happens. Like they've probably, I'm not going to like say for certain, but like it wouldn't surprise me if they called the Raiders and was like, "Hey, is Devontae Adams available?" Like, teams call to see. So checking in with the 49ers about Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, there might not be anything more to that. And I think with Ayuk specifically, they're probably balking at the first round. They're probably looking for something similar to an AJ Brown trade right now from San Francisco side. And maybe they get that on draft night, but like right now, I don't think anybody's paying a first round pick for him. So especially when you could have gotten, and I know that the contract that he came with, but like Stephon Diggs going for a future 2, like next year's 2, not even a pick this year, along with getting a 6th and 7th back. Like, I understand the contract's not great, but for Buffalo to trade him and take on $31 million dead cap, that's pretty wild. I will say, you asked me about how confident I would be. I mean, this is just me. Ricky Pearsall is my number 6 wide receiver in this class. Very close to being a top 30 overall player for me. So if it was him that we got, I would actually feel pretty decent about him as a wide receiver too. I know not everybody feels that way. A little bit of a question about the inside-outside versatility. Some people think he's strictly a slot. Man, I think he's the perfect pairing with George. Like, he is a route technician. That's what his game is. Also a little bit of an older prospect, 24 years old, or turns 24 before the season starts, one or the other. But I'm a huge fan of his game, and I think that just goes to show the type of receiver that I always kind of gravitate towards. That's why I was such a big Deontay Johnson fan. But like his route running, I think is special. Like I know, again, I don't think anybody has him as high as wide receiver 6 in this class besides me. Like I have him just under Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze, Mitchell, and Brian Thomas Jr. So I have him ahead of Polk, McConkey, McMillan, Burton, literally everybody else.
I wouldn't hate it. I'm very curious to see who it's going to end up being, because we know they're going to draft one.
Yeah,
Also,
I
another
think. By the end of day 2, they're going to draft somebody. I just don't know who it's going to. They're not going to wait until round 4 or beyond to do it.
Yeah. Another position you mentioned. No, I don't think they've done enough at slot corner either. Because who is your slot corner? Like,
I
if
mean,
you're playing a
right
game
now,
today.
my best guess, I think they're going to draft somebody. But like, honestly, it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to just give old Patrick Peterson a call or bring Shannon Sullivan back. Like, I think both those things are certainly on the table as well.
So what you're saying is our slot corner is not on the roster. You just didn't even go that
no
route.
way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Joey. You have Joey Porter Jr. and then you have 3 guys that are out on the boundary, and Dante Jackson, Darius Rush, and Corey Trice coming back from injury. That's what you have right now on the roster. There's not a single guy. People have talked about Dante Jackson's ability to play inside too. Hell no. Has he played there at times, like in coverage snaps? Sure, but with what the Steelers asked of their slot corners, being able to tackle and help out and run support, absolutely not. It's not happening. Dante Jackson's too small. He's gotten, taken advantage of in those situations in the past. So maybe he can be a pass down slot at times, like kick inside, but he's not going to be a true nickel where you're asking him to, do the things and run support that the Steelers do. So, I would guess the draft, there's Mike Sanger still, I think would be a perfect fit for what they want to do. But there's other, like Javon Bullard and Tyke Smith, both played safety at Georgia, but I think they're going to play slot at the NFL. Daquan Hardy, I know people don't want to hear it because he's a pick guy. MJ Devonshire. If they're going to wait on nickel, man, in the 6th round or something, I think he'd be a great pick, to be honest with you.
Beaver County's finest, by the way. Shout out to Aliquippa. Yeah, I think slot they definitely have to address in the draft with somebody.
It could be even like say there's a scenario where there's a run on tackles. Like if they take Cooper DeJean,
I was about to ask you: is there a scenario where Cooper DeJean could even be in the conversation for them? Like, have they met with him? I genuinely don't know.
So I don't know what representation they had for him, but he just had his own pro day because he wasn't able to physically compete. But they've met with him, I believe, in some capacity. I don't know exactly what that was. He's not one of the guys that like checks all the boxes that typically in the past you would look at for the Steelers. But like, there's a lot of guys that you feel like are natural Steelers fits if that's the case for. This is going to be the year, if there was ever a year for them to break their trend of, Tomlin and Khan being at a pro day. Well, I say Khan, but GM in the past, Colbert, now Khan. It's going to be this year just because of how weird things were. You had so many pro days during the tampering period and beginning of free agency. And then you had also huge pro days during the owners meetings in Florida. Just like the scheduling was really weird this year compared to past years. So I think this is the year that it potentially breaks. I'm not going to say for certain, because if you're asking me right now, my best guess is Amarius Mims is a Pittsburgh Steeler on draft night. That could change by the time we get there. But for right now, that's my pick. Cooper DeJean, though, the reason I mentioned him is because if they take him, I think the first spot he plays in the NFL is in the slot. So he could definitely provide that role for the Steelers right away.
I saw it. Was it SI? I don't know if it was Noah's article. I think today he posted a mock draft, or yesterday he posted a mock draft, and he had them taking Max Melton, I believe.
I like him a lot too. Yeah, I've come around on him. Also, he's at the NFL Bloodlines, which the Steelers are probably like as well. Yeah, Max Melton is an interesting player because there's been a lot of talk about inside and outside with him as well. I know Derek likes him too. I also like Renardo Green out of Florida State, but Max Melton's an interesting player. 5'11", 187. He's just 20. He just turned 21 actually. He turns 22 this month. His birthday's in April, but it hasn't happened yet. So relatively young player. Like I said, he's got the family bloodlines in the league. Grandfather played receiver and running back. Mom was on the basketball team at Rutgers. His brother Bo Melton is a receiver. So I don't know. I could see him making sense. I think that's probably 3rd round, pick 84, I would guess. Range for him.
If he drops around there.
I mean, I like him, but I don't see him at like top 50.
Yeah.
Somebody might. It only takes one team to do it. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I think that's probably the range where the Steelers would do it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what area they pick these guys. And obviously the board falls certain ways, so that'll determine a lot of what they're picking. But I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, I have a hard time seeing like if they draft a tackle first, I still think there's a chance that they could go tackle center with their second round pick. But if they draft a center first, I have a hard time envisioning them getting a tackle in the second round.
You know what, man? I mean, I know everybody has their own boards. Melton has shot up. He is the number 47 player on Pro Football Network's board. So he might have to be the second round. 51. If they were to do it. He's ahead of Ennis Rakestraw, Kamari Lassiter, Chris Abrams-Drain, Renardo Green, Mike Sainterstill, Andrew Phillips, Kyrie Jackson. Yeah, I mean, I like him. I didn't realize that that's kind of the range that he was at now. I thought he was more in like the Renardo Green territory, but he's not. He's, like I said, he's right around that top 50 with Ennis Rakestraw.
It's interesting to me this time of year with the draft. Normally, I feel like we have a better grasp on not only just positions, but like players the Steelers would be keying in on. This year, I feel like it's a mystery. Like I have no idea who they're going to pick, when they're going to pick.
They have two players that check all the boxes in terms of 30 visit, combine interview, and took to dinner. And it is Amarius Mims and Nate Wiggins.
I was going to say Zach Frazier. I didn't know.
No, they didn't bother meeting with him at his 30 doesn't count as a top 30 because he's considered local being a West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, that's what I was mentioning. Like with the center interest, it's hard to get a good gauge on exactly where they're at with it. But honestly, I mentioned what I did about Jatcha Powers Johnson. Graham Barton, I think there's a chance they like Graham Barton more than Zach Frazier. But I don't see them taking a center at 20, and I think there's a better chance. Like Nick and I were talking about this, we both think Frazier's going to end up being there at 51. We think the center class did get pushed down. I think Barton is the first interior guy to go. I think Jatcha Powers Johnson will go somewhere earlier on day 2 than Frazier. Frazier ends up being there at 51.
I mean, that's natural too. If you think about it, like the run that could happen with quarterbacks, if quarterbacks get pushed up, then that's going to push a lot of positions down. Could push tackles down. If tackles get pushed down, centers are going to get pushed down. Yeah, it's like a domino effect.
Kingsley
Suamataia. Go ahead, say the name.
Suamataia.
There you go. Better than the first time you said it.
Well, the first time I said it, I didn't know how to say it. Yeah, I think he could be a like back end of round 1, early round 2 pick.
Yeah, I've seen him
he's
moving
cousins
up
with Penei Sewell.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And actual cousins, not like the Polynesian version of cousins. Yeah, like they're actual cousins. So he's cousins
like the Rock and Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
Cousins.
Yeah, Penei Sewell and Noah Sewell are his cousins. They played in high school together.
I might take him just because of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But also another position before we end that I was just looking at the depth chart for the Steelers that I don't really feel comfortable with depth-wise. I like the starters, but the depth, it's just defensive line. I feel like it gets brushed under the rug so much year in and year out. And eventually I feel like the Steelers are going to have to address it in a serious way. Because you look at the starters listed right now as Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton, and Cameron Hayward. But after that, you're relying on your seconds as Dean Lowry, Montravius Adams, and DeMarvin Leal. I don't know how confident I feel about that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Monty Adams, but DeMarvin Leal hasn't really figured out what he is at the NFL level. Dean Lowry, not sure how confident I feel about that if he had to play in an extended period of time. And then you got Brandon Fajoku, Jonathan Marshall, Jacob Slade after those guys. But I feel like defensive line is just one of those positions every single season that we're going to talk about that's underrated need for the Steelers. And it's not necessarily starting-wise, but it's definitely depth-wise. And eventually, whether that's draft, whether that's free agency, trades, whatever it's going to happen, Steelers are going to have to eventually address that because Cam Hayward's getting older. Larry Ogunjobi, I know he signed that extension before last season. I don't know how long he's going to be a Steeler, if it's going to be past this season. And so you're going to be sitting there with Keanu Benton as your really sole starter that you have left. And they're going to have to address who's going to be playing with him. That's something that I don't know. I don't think it'll necessarily be addressed in this draft. But it's just another position I'm looking at that maybe not for this season, but for upcoming seasons after the 2024 season, they're going to have to start to take a long look at defensive tackle and maybe draft maybe high in 2025's draft one early because of the need they're going to have for it.
Yeah, we actually just recently started talking about that position over on the afternoon drive because like you said, it's kind of flown under the radar. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but there's certainly a need there for a long-term piece, if not a short-term piece. Like Keanu Benton is really probably the only guy that you feel great about going forward beyond this season. Like I like Monty Adams. Don't know what like his long-term future is though. It is like he's a rotational piece. Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi, nothing beyond this year guaranteed. I know Dean Lowry got a 2-year contract. I don't know why he got a 2-year contract. Isaiah Loudermilk, DeMarvin Leal. I'd be very surprised if DeMarvin Leal's on the roster in 2024, let alone beyond it. So the long-term pieces just aren't there. And I think if the opportunity presents itself, they should pull the trigger. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But like, you're never going to have to sell me very hard on buying into the trenches.
Yeah, same. Maybe it's because we're big guys.
We just gravitate naturally towards it. Yeah. Just every year, you should only draft offensive and defensive linemen. Free agency is for everything else.
If you don't weigh at least 260, I don't even want to look at you.
It's like we are with every other position that's not the line, what the Steelers are with the West Coast.
Pretty much, yeah.
We just ignore it. No, I get it. I actually, my two favorite positions to watch are cornerback and receiver. So, personally.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like those are probably the sexiest positions to watch for sure.
Yeah. Like one-on-ones that take place at like the Senior Bowl and stuff. Oh, yeah. That's the stuff right there.
Like, yeah. Like, what was it, the first or second day of the I think it might have been the second day of the Senior Bowl whenever Dane Jackson was in one-on-ones and he was cooking people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a great Senior Bowl that year. I don't remember when he ended up getting drafted. I think he still didn't draft until like the 6th round, but I mean, he was awesome down in Mobile.
That could have been the difference. That could have gotten him drafted.
Yeah, maybe he was an undrafted guy going into that week. Who knows? Anything else Steelers related?
No, we are closing in on. Actually, after this, as of when this is going to come out, there's less than 2 weeks till the draft.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, not that I want to put you on the spot and ask you on here. Any more information in terms of what you will be doing during, or is it literally just going to be? We have to see when the Steelers are picking.
I mean, we'll definitely have to see when the Steelers are picking. I'm going to be really ticked if I wake up at like 3 a.m. in France and they trade their pick.
I mean, I don't know. I would say I think they definitely trade back at some point within the first 4 picks that they have. I just don't know which one's going to be.
I will say, and luckily, I don't know if my parents listen to the show. I guess I'll get a text if I find out. But I'm keeping on the DL that this could be happening because the next day we're going to go to Disneyland Paris on that Friday for day 2 of the draft, and I don't want my parents or the rest of my family getting on to me about waking up in the middle of the night before we go to Disneyland Paris the next day to get on a live show to see who the Steelers draft. So we're just going to keep that on the DL from them for a little bit.
Okay. Well, we'll see what Tyler's availability is, but I will definitely be here. Joe Frick, Drew Hannis, John Sargis. I'm saying these names as if they're like celebrities and you guys know them. Our friends are going to be on here with me on the podcast. But if you guys watch the Fantasy Football Show, Drew and Joe host that. They'll be on with me. Sarge used to do our YouTube videos, and he's appeared on the podcast before. He'll be on live with me as well. We'll see who else pops in. Maybe somebody that was recently a guest will be on the show as well. I'm working on something to see if somebody can make an appearance, at least for the Steelers pick. But we'll see if I can make that happen. But there's going to be jersey giveaways, ticket giveaways, merch giveaways for us, and Game Changers, a Terry Bradshaw Funko Pop. It's going to be a blast. It always is. Of course, Mid Kiper Jr., from what I understand, will be here. That'll be interesting with Tyler not being here, with him being kind of the host. We're handing him the keys. Not sure how I feel about it, but that's probably how it's going to take place. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting balancing act there with Mid Kiper Jr. running the ship. But yeah, so that'll be going on. Be sure to join us. That'll be both night 1 and night 2. I'll be honest. I don't know how night 1's going to go. Mid Kiper might not be here for night 2. We'll see how night 1 goes.
His voice might wear out.
Yeah, the voice might wear out. I might or Mid might not feel like
Midnight might not make it to the Steelers pick, if we're being honest.
I think he ran out of juice last year.
I think last year it was like 2 hours
right around the Steelers pick. Right around the Steelers pick, I think.
Mid just suddenly left.
But he was back for night 2 last year. I don't know if that's going to happen this year. We'll see. But either way, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on everything. Draft related, what we talked about. Where are you guys at with the Steelers free agency? Obviously, they've made a ton of splash moves. The moves that they've made, Russell Wilson, Patrick Queen, Justin Fields, great additions, but have they done enough? What if they had to play a game tomorrow? Where would you be at with things? So let us know in the comments. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you were listening somewhere else that isn't YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Go out and check that out there because we are there. Download the app The Cut and book an appointment with our sponsor, Teach Barbershop, right above Tyler if you're watching on YouTube, scrolling across the ticker as well. Teach Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Again, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Teach Barbershop. Christian, Tony, Ashley, they all do a great job over there. Christian is appointment only. Tony and Ashley both take walk-ins. So old school vibe in there. Great place. And they've been with us pretty much since day one. Also, everything custom designs in the description of the show. T-shirts, hoodies. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She's cooking up a bunch of different things. Mention the tumblers as well. Hopefully, within the next couple episodes, I have mine. And she ships them too. So if Tyler does want to get one, she can definitely send one out to him. So we'll have to make that happen. I'm wearing one of the T-shirts right now, the black with the gold print of our logo, which, by the way, Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth, who was just on the pod last week, gonna be rocking some merch in the very near future as well. So shout out to Haley. Very cool for her as well to know that Pat Freiermuth is gonna be rocking something that she created. So that's awesome. Yeah, he even texted me back and was like, "What's the name?" I said our friend does the small business that's creating the shirt. So like, I don't know exactly when we're going to be able to get them out to you. I don't know how long it takes her to print them and ship them out. And he was like, "Oh, no problem. What's the name of the small business?" Because I want to give her a shout out. I was like, "Oh, this guy's the best." So yeah, hopefully he does something for her as well. And I know she'll appreciate that. So that'll be cool. And you guys can go do the same. Everything Custom Designs. Go check it out. Link is in the description of the show. Other than that, for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. Come back next week and we'll do another one of these. Until then, something else is popping up on your screen right now. Go click on it. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.